Hey, well, welcome everyone. We have about 30 folks in attendance here. I think we're expecting about 10 more, so we'll wait a few minutes to get started. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like, but not necessary. Sorry, everyone, it looked like the chat was disabled, so that is now enabled. Feel free to chat away. Okay, we have almost 40 folks in attendance. Claudia, should we get started?
Sure, that sounds great. Welcome, everybody. It is so nice to see you all. I was just kind of scrolling through the list of attendees, and it's great to see some new people and some people who have been around for a while. This is one of our favorite times because we get to interact with so many volunteers, and some of you we get to meet with and work with all the time, and others we only get to see at this time. So it's so nice to see everyone. Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Claudia Powell, and I am a research professor and the associate director of the University of Arizona Southwest Institute for Research on Women. And for the purposes of the point in time count and street count and this volunteer training, I am the co-chair, along with Corey Brinley, who I'll allow to introduce herself in a second, of the Point in Time Count Committee. And that committee consists of about 8 to 10 people who work really hard for several months to make sure that this point in time count goes off without a hitch. So Corey, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Corey Brinley, and I am an assistant research social scientist with the University of Arizona CIRO with Claudia, and have been working with Everyone Counts for getting close to 10 years, I think. It's been a long time, and I've been fortunate to get to be a part of the planning committee work group for, I think, 8 of those years. And it's always a pleasure to get to be a part of such an important endeavor in our community and work alongside so many wonderful volunteers. So we're really happy to have this time to meet with you today and jump into our first training of the 2023 street count season. So I'm going to pass things back to Claudia, and we're going to jump into the training today.
That sounds great. And I just ask that you all bear with us a little bit. As many of you know, this training for several years has taken place in person. And at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had planned to do things a little bit differently and to offer it virtually. But then we did not conduct the count for the last 2 years. So we're back, and we understand, though, even though we did it in person, it was a great chance for people to be together, meet their team leads, and to have a training. We always really struggled with space and time, and knew that it was probably a really good idea, especially as we are incorporating more technology in the count, to do our training virtually as well. So if you have questions, we're going to try to monitor the chat and the Q&A as we go, but bear with us a little bit as we are also getting used to doing this training in a different format than we have in years past.
And Claudia, could I add, I just do see, and I am bumbling my way through here today too. The chat is open, but if you do have a question a specific question, please put it in the question and answer section. I see that one participant currently had their hand raised. And though we can't open mics for every question that you have, it would be great if you could put that into the question and answer so we can get those answered as we go.
Great, thanks, Corey. Next slide. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about share what TPCH is, Tucson Pima Collaboration to End Homelessness. And I know some of you on the training know TPCH much better than Corey and I do, but we'll share a little bit about TPCH for those who aren't familiar. The goal of the point in time count. We'll talk about interviewing during a pandemic. So though we're not at the heart of COVID-19, we still are in a pandemic and really need to take precautions to protect those who are most vulnerable, especially those who will be interviewed during the point in time count. Team roles, we have some different team roles than we've had in years past. So we'll discuss what those are and who is, so people who have been assigned different roles or who have selected different roles will know more about what that role entails. We'll talk about the count, the day of the count. We'll talk about safety when interviewing people experiencing homelessness, and we'll talk about the survey application or app. So as those of you, as probably all of you know, because you have filled out the volunteer application and have seen the emails, we are using an app this year to administer the point in time count, which will help for so many reasons. We've always used paper, but now we're shifting to an app. And so again, we know there might be some challenges, just like there might be with this, our volunteer training, but we're ready to take it on knowing that that's the way we need to move forward. And it's makes a lot of sense for the count and for our community. So TPCH is a coalition of community and faith-based organizations, government entities, businesses, and individuals. So this collaboration is made up of several community-based agencies and partners from across the county who come together to end, the goal is to end homelessness in our community. So the mission of TPCH is to reduce and end homelessness and address the issues related to homelessness in our community. One of the things that's interesting about TPCH and about federal funding is, unlike some other kinds of federal funding opportunities, HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, has decided that they don't necessarily want to decide how our community ends homelessness, how they don't want to decide which agencies specifically receive money for housing and which agencies receive the type of housing programs that we want in our community. They decide that that's up to our community. And TPCH is charged with that task of deciding how to spend the funds provided by HUD in our community with the goal of ending homelessness. So TPCH goals are to act as advocates for people experiencing homelessness, to provide leadership and serve as experts and advisors to local planning and funding bodies on issues that impact services to people experiencing homelessness, and to increase community awareness and support for people experiencing homeless issues, and TPCH itself and member organizations. And the city of Tucson serves as what we refer to as our collaborative applicant. So the city of Tucson is charged with the task of leading TPCH in all administrative functions and in supporting the continuum of care. Every community who receives HUD funding has to have a community. I'm sorry, I'm losing my words right now. A COC, a collaboration of a group of organizations to work together to end homelessness. And I'm gonna actually minimize the chat because things are popping up and it's distracting me. Okay. Next slide, please. Sorry, I didn't minimize the chat, I minimized everything.
So the next slide, I can take over, Claudia. First.
Thanks, Corey.
Yourself, is looking at what the goal is. And since we're all muted here, you could feel free to type in the chat different reasons why you think we do this count every year. Why is this important to our community? Any thoughts that people want to share? So Margaret suggested that it's tied to funding and policy initiatives to secure federal funding to help connect folks to resources. Jean suggested funding as well. And yes, these are all reasons. Someone said to identify the needs of clients. Yeah, which is completely right. We want to better understand who's experiencing homelessness and better create services in our community to address those issues. Someone else suggested to make changes now so that future generations can have better lives, most definitely thinking long-term about solving solutions to homelessness, to ending homelessness, to get us just a general sense of how many people are needing services and to get people the help they need. Yes, these are all reasons that we do this count. And so the actual goal of our count is was mentioned in some of your comments, right? To get a count of everyone who's experiencing homelessness in Tucson and Pima County. And we do that. I'll pass it back to Claudia. The why you guys have kind of already started answering, but I'll pass it back your way, Claudia.
Great. Thanks, Corey. So we all know that we need data to determine what's happening in our community. So and obviously there's never enough funding or enough housing for everybody. So what the count is intended to do is to determine the size and scope of homelessness in our community, and that helps the COC, the continuum of care, to help plan services and programs appropriately to see who the people are in our community who are experiencing homelessness. What are there specific characteristics about people that are more prevalent from one year to the next, or people who are we seeing more need in certain communities? And we also want to take a good hard look at our programs and determine how our programs are doing to address homelessness in our community. So HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, needs the data to understand the extent and nature of the problem throughout the country, to provide Congress with information on services provided, gaps in services, equity, that there's a new strategic plan, a new federal strategic plan to end homelessness, and that has a very solid and strong focus on equity. So they'd like to know, in our communities, are we providing services equitably? And if not, how do we shift services to serve people in a way that serves all people? And HUD also needs this data to make funding decisions. So people who are having a larger problem obviously need more funding to address that problem. And they also are hoping to kind of take a look at the programming in our area and then make decisions based on how well our programs are providing services to our community members. So where do we do this survey? Most of you are from kind of the metro area of Pima County. So that's city of Tucson and the areas surrounding the city of Tucson that are all either very urban or suburban areas. But we have a really large county, and we're charged with the task of taking a look at homelessness across the county. So we not only want to know what's happening in Pima County, I mean, in the city of Tucson in the metro area, but we also want to know what's happening in our more rural areas. So in this count, you won't be asked to travel somewhere a couple hours away to be doing interviews in the more rural communities, but we do take a look at that, and we're working every year to have better systems in place to look at rural homelessness as well. And our county is actually a really large county in comparison to a lot of the areas across the country that a COC would cover. So COCs are designated to cover a specific area, and our COC, the TPCH Tucson Pima collaboration, covers the entire county, which is a really large area. And so now I'll turn it over to Corey. She's going to talk a little bit about what it means to still be collecting, doing interviews and collecting information during COVID-19.
Thanks, Claudia. So we're kind of taking the slides that Pima County presented last year and using them again. We're not fortunate enough to have them here with us this time. We're going to still kind of follow the guidelines that they set forth for us. So generally, we're asking folks to wear masks. We're encouraging folks to, and strongly recommending that folks wear an N95 mask while engaging with folks during the street count. So on the morning of the count, we're working with your fellow counters, people working with you as interviewers, as well as people that you're going to be approaching in the community. We ask that you remain masked. We will have N95 masks in a kit that your team lead will have for you. So if you don't have a mask available to you, that's fine. There's no need to bring one, though of course you're welcome to. One will be provided for you. We'll also have a large amount of masks available for you to carry in case you'd like to invite people that you're talking with or serving to wear a mask as well. This might also be just something that they might like to have, so please feel free to distribute those widely when out in the community completing surveys. We also encourage folks to use hand sanitizer, and we'll have that available for you in the kit that you'll receive as well. And just to utilize that throughout the morning of the count, especially after perhaps shaking hands or sharing a pen or exchanging telephone, to just use that sanitizer as much as you feel like you need. And of course, if you find that you're not feeling well, a few days prior or the morning of the count, please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know that you're not feeling well. And we prefer that you remain home and keep everyone safe. It's also important to maintain social distance while completing surveys in the community. So we encourage people to maintain 6 feet of distance when possible, especially when folks aren't wearing masks. If both parties are masked, only 3 feet of distance is recommended by Pima County. Okay, so we're going to jump into team roles. So we have 4 different potential roles that people can volunteer. Some folks might be cross-volunteering, but I doubt that. Most people are going to have one sole role while volunteering for the count. And so these are team leads, interviewers, administrative assistants, and supply runners. Typically, we need the most interviewer volunteers, and currently we are still in need of about 100 volunteers. So just a little prompt to all of you, if you haven't shared this information about this volunteer opportunity with any of your colleagues or friends in the community, please do so. We really are in need still of a number of volunteers. We also need about 50 total team leads. And right now, I think we have around 20 or 25. So that's also a role that's important. And we'll go through what's expected there. But if you are someone who's a leader in your current position, you are supervising others already, we would really encourage you, if you haven't already volunteered to be a team lead, to consider taking on that role and stepping out of just the interviewer role. It's an important role on the count and really doesn't require all that much more time. Two other roles that we have are administrative assistants and supply runners, which are new this year. And so we're going to go through all of these. So a team lead, their responsibilities are to connect with all of their team members prior to the morning of the count. They're in charge of managing the team and the geographic area. So each one of you is going to be assigned to what we call a sector, which is an area of Pima County that you're responsible for surveying. So for getting out on foot and in your vehicle and identifying folks experiencing homelessness or having slept outside that night. So the team lead's job is to kind of get out into that sector prior to the morning of the count and get to know that area, look around and see places that they think that people might be experiencing homelessness or might be sheltering at night, different places that people might be dropping into the morning. So looking for libraries and looking for Circle K's, different areas that people might be stopping by, and also areas people might be sleeping, like washes or alleyways. They're also the point person for the team. So when folks have questions about how to complete the survey while they're out in the field or an emergency pops up, the team lead is in charge of kind of helping to quickly problem solve those issues. They also serve as the liaison between headquarters and the team. So rather than if any challenges or problems are cropping up during the morning of the count, rather than having each of those people call into headquarters with those issues, they should be going to their team lead, and then their team lead should be problem solving first and then coming to headquarters as problems exist or they can't solve those problems. They're also responsible for ensuring that all surveys get turned in. Though, as Claudia mentioned, we are not doing paper surveys this year. Almost all surveys will be completed on the app. We will be having a very, very small number of paper surveys that the team lead will have control of and will be able to use in different types of emergency situations. So if those are collected, they'll be responsible for turning those in. And of course, we'll ask that the team lead wear a mask while interviewing. Interviewers, your responsibility are to complete this training. So congratulations, you're halfway there. You're going to need to download this survey app if you haven't already, and we're going to go through that process in today's training. So hopefully that'll clear up any questions you have there. It's your job to practice the survey and get to know it before you go out into the field and begin surveying others. It's your job to complete the survey as accurately as possible with folks experiencing homelessness. Your job to be a positive representative for Everyone Counts. So you're out there representing the Tucson Pima collaboration to end homelessness and the Everyone Counts endeavor. And we're hoping that you'll be able to positively represent us so that folks feel comfortable to engage in services as needed and be a part of the count again, unfortunately, if they're experiencing chronic homelessness. Also, be responsible for wearing a mask while interviewing. Administrative assistance is a new role. We tried to do this last year, but it ended up happening since we canceled the count. But we think this is going to be a really important role, and we're excited. There's been a number of folks who volunteered in this area, so we're very excited to have you on in this role. This is someone who isn't able to go out or isn't interested in going out the morning of the count as an interviewer. Though if you are able to do that and volunteered this way, we would encourage you to volunteer as an interviewer if possible. And you can switch your role easily by emailing us. But if you do want to volunteer into this position, you're going to be connected with a team lead, and that you're going to help that team lead to stay in touch with and communicate with all of their team members. So you'll be helping make phone calls and send emails to different team members and ensuring that they have the information they need for the morning of the count so that they know where they're supposed to be, when, and have the right contact information to get in touch with their team lead. So basically, you're the liaison between the team lead and the team members. So we ask for folks in this role to have experience with using email and comfortable making phone calls, lots of phone calls. Supply runners is another important role, but again, one that we have a lot of people who volunteered here, and we could really use more people in the interviewer role. So if you've applied here and could be an interview, we'd ask for you to switch into that role. But for folks who want to stick here, we do need folks to run supplies. And basically, you are available from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m.-ish. And you meet up at headquarters when necessary, which is going to be on campus, and we'll share that address with you. And you help to take supplies that we have on campus to the folks in the community that need them, or from one team to another. Basically, what happens is there's a limited number of supplies, and most of the supplies that we're talking about this year are gift cards. So we estimate the number of gift cards that each team will need, but we can never be completely correct there. And so one team will be down to, let's say, 1 gift card, while another team has 10. And one of the teams suddenly comes upon a camp and needs a number of gift cards. So we'll need a runner to run to one location and take supplies to another. And you basically do this back and forth throughout the day. So folks in this position need to have a charged phone, need to be very comfortable taking phone calls and quickly driving from one location to the next. So have a safe and secure vehicle to use. Will also need to be comfortable receiving text messages and using maps and directions in their phone to get from one location to another, because folks may be in some remote areas. But it's a fun job, I think, in the count. You get to meet a lot of folks. We don't require you to wear a mask other than when you're interacting with others while delivering supplies. Okay, so I'm going to throw things back to Claudia, and she's going to talk a little about how to plan for the morning of the count.
Great, thank you. So for those of you who have done this before, you know we start very early in the morning, and the actual time that you'll start in the morning is determined by your team lead. So you'll hear more information about that from your administrative assistant, or from the administrative assistant from your team, or from your team lead. And one of those people will be sharing with you where you're meeting up and at what time. So when you meet up with your team, you'll pair up with at least one other person, possibly 2 other people. Nobody should be walking around by themselves to interview folks. Everybody should be in a pair at minimum. And you will be assigned a specific sector. So that sector, your team lead will have really good information about the boundaries of your sector. And it's really important to stay within the boundaries of your sector, because somebody else is assigned to the sector next door. And if you decide, oh, I see someone across the street, but this is my that's not in my sector, that's someone else's sector. You may call and say there's a whole bunch of people over here, but it's not our sector, so we can communicate with that team. But we want to reduce the chance of duplication. We don't want to interview people more than once. So your goal of the morning is to survey all individuals experiencing homelessness that you see in your sector. It is also your responsibility to read all questions as written. At times, and as we go through the survey, you will understand some of the questions are a little bit hard to ask and may feel uncomfortable. And we'll talk about that again during the survey. But it's not the decision of the interviewers to decide what people are comfortable or uncomfortable answering. Every person should have the opportunity to answer each question. And if a person does not want to answer that question, they don't have to. A person doesn't have to answer any question they don't want to, but it is our responsibility as interviewers to read all the questions. And also it is a responsibility of interviewers to communicate challenges with team leads. So if something comes up that is not what you expected, makes you uncomfortable, you're not sure what to do, to communicate with the team lead. The team lead should either have an idea about what you should do, or we'll quickly get in touch with headquarters if there's something we can assist with. So the day of the count, everybody should come prepared with their phone fully charged. So make sure you're plugging that phone in the night before. I know sometimes we're all guilty of not plugging it in, but it's important that your phone that has data capabilities is fully charged. And if you have portable chargers, it would be fantastic if you would charge those up and bring them. So for some of us have a ton of portable chargers and other people don't have any, but if you're willing to share with the people on your team, that could be really helpful. Again, this being a new year and us not having used the app before, we're just not sure how much data it will take, how quickly it will run phones down. So we're hopeful and we think it will be fine, but it would be great if you had the ability to charge and car chargers as well, because most teams will be doing some driving around. You'll have a team information sheet that shows at least the team lead, everyone on who's on the team, and information for all of the team members to contact the team lead. Warm layered clothes. We start out early in the morning, and who knows, I don't know, I haven't checked the weather yet. I'm not sure if it's available or if it's accurate at this point, but we all know how Tucson is, and it can be really, really cold in the morning and then warm up really quickly as soon as the sun comes out. So just make sure you're taking care of yourself that way. It's not a morning where you can plan to be sitting in your car with the heat blasting and having a warm cup of coffee. It's definitely, you'll be outside, so make sure you're prepared for that. A mask and hand sanitizer. And I just want to talk a little bit about the masks again. I know most of us are not wearing masks in our daily lives. A lot of us aren't wearing them in our workplaces anymore. But I think we all need to keep in mind that we are bringing hundreds of volunteers to meet with people who are strangers to them usually, and in a community. So we're bringing 100 people to talk and ask questions, and often talk for more than 15 minutes face to face with a very vulnerable population. And we are well aware that it's people who are getting COVID are doing better, but people who are housed getting COVID and people who are unhoused are really two different things, and we really need to be protecting those who are most vulnerable. So please be prepared with a mask and hand sanitizer, and you will have extra masks to provide to the people who you're interviewing if they are interested in wearing a mask as well. Comfortable shoes, like I said, it's not a day you'll be sitting in your car, so you need to make sure you're comfortable in your shoes, and water or snacks or whatever you need for the morning. Be conscious of what you're wearing, probably huge diamond rings. It's not necessarily the morning to have that, but have your ID, your cell phone, and other valuables you can leave behind, and just dress appropriately, weather-wise, and comfortable.
Yeah, Claudia, I would reiterate leaving any purses or bags behind, and really just being a super minimalist when out, so that your hands are free for serving. And I will add, I got a note from the person who developed our app, and they shared a note just prior to the training that the survey application does drain a lot of energy out of your phone, because while it's on, even if you're not completing a survey, it has, GIS, so it's going to be able to pinpoint exactly where you are when completing a survey, which is a helpful tool and data point for the count, but it also takes up a lot of energy out of your phone to be mapping you at that time. So definitely, if you have a portable charger, if you have extra ones, please bring them for yourself and for others on your team.
Thanks, Corey. So the media, some of you may have seen that there's been some spots on local news or radio recently, and there are always media who come out during the time of the count, and most of them do exactly what we would ask them to do, is to come kind of through the planning team, and we assign them to specific teams, and they're usually the team lead of those teams that they're assigned to has pretty robust knowledge about the count, about TPCH, and they're also allowed to speak as per their organization rules. So, but for the rest of us, please, if you encounter the media and they're interested in knowing more about the count, direct them to headquarters, and everyone will have the number for headquarters, and you can just share that you're not a spokesperson and this is who they should call. And also ensure the confidentiality of the people who you're interviewing. So if there happens to be a media person in your area and they seem to be maybe filming you or filming someone who you're interviewing, prioritize the confidentiality of the people who are being interviewed and make sure that's not happening. And if you're having any trouble with that, please contact headquarters and we'll help with that as well. Make sure that if a media person talks to you that you're not sharing any confidential information. So all of the information that we collect is private and confidential. It goes directly into the app, and we shouldn't share that with anyone else. Please don't speak on behalf of TPCH or CIRO, and please don't allow the media to interview or film others without the person's consent. Usually we have great luck with the media, but we just want to remind everybody that sometimes it can be a little bit confusing when a person with the camera shows up. Let's see, and who do we survey? So as you are out maybe early in the morning, it will be early in the morning, it may be dark. We're looking for people who we would guess have slept outside the night before. So this particular count is really only counting the unsheltered portion of this count is only counting people who have slept outside the previous night. So you're looking for people who look like they have slept outside the night before. Sometimes that can be confusing, and sometimes you may approach somebody who hasn't slept outside the night before, but looks like they may have. So if you see people, obviously, where there are sometimes parks in areas where people have slept, or people who seem to have a lot of belongings in a cart or some other kind of a stroller or wagon or something like that, that they're carrying around their belongings. And people who look like they're prepared for the weather that we've had, maybe people who have are people who we're interviewing, but you're always going to approach somebody and ask them a couple of questions. So you can clarify whether or not they're eligible to be interviewed when you approach them, but you'd like to give people an opportunity to answer the questions if they have indeed slept outside the night before. We don't want to wake people up. We don't want to knock on cars where people are sleeping. We certainly don't want to alarm anyone who we're interviewing. We want to make sure that all that we're doing feels respectful to the people who we want to interview and is a good representation of what we're striving to do as well.
And Claudia, I'd like to add, I know for myself, when I've done this in the past and been out searching for people, it does feel really uncomfortable sometimes to make judgment calls about, who's experiencing homelessness and who's not, and feels uncomfortable to approach someone and say, you look like you've been experiencing homelessness. Like, that's obviously not what you want to say. So I found what worked best for me and what made me feel most comfortable and made me feel like I was providing respect for others was to really just talk to most of the people that I encountered in my sector and let them know what I was doing. So I would say, hi, I'm Corey. I'm trying to find folks that have experienced homelessness or experiencing homelessness and slept outside last night. Do you know this area? Do you know where I might find someone who slept outside in this area? And if that person in fact had, they'll normally volunteer that information to you. And if they hadn't, they normally will tell you, oh, I live over here and you should go to this bus stop over here. There's always someone over here, or there's always someone over there. And so I find that talking to everyone really does give you, takes the judgment piece away and does provide more information for finding folks in that area. And that feels comfortable to me.
That's great advice. And most people will feel more comfortable talking to everyone at that hour of the morning than picking and choosing who you talk to. So a little bit about the survey. As Corey mentioned, the first step you'll take is to introduce yourself, explain what you're doing. And you may want to practice this a little bit, especially if you haven't done it in the past, that your name is, whatever your name is and what the count is and what TPCH is. And practicing it will certainly make it a little bit easier to do the day of the count. You'll want to explain that the survey is confidential, that you're collecting this information, it's going into an app and it's being stored, but that no one has access to this other than people within the homeless service database. They're the only people who really have access to this information. And keeping in mind that you're going to ask all the questions, but people can decline any portion or any question that they don't want to answer. And so there's an opportunity for everybody to say at each question that they don't want to answer that question. For each person who answers a survey, you will be able to give them a $5 gift card. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in safety, but if somebody doesn't want to answer a survey and they still want a gift card, or they stop after 2 questions or something, it is just fine to give them a gift card. It's not something you have to be stressed about or wonder like, oh, I don't feel like I should do this, they didn't really answer. It's a $5 gift card. We know that most of the people who we interview, it's the very least we can do for to thank them for their time. So if it feels more comfortable to provide a gift card, then please feel free to do so. And there are a couple of questions about whether people are either veterans or if they're youth, and we'll have a contact that your team lead will have the contact of if there's a veteran or a young person who they can contact right then and there. And we don't have contacts for everybody, and it's really not our goal to connect. It's not really our goal. It's absolutely not our goal during this count to connect people to services at that moment. Everyone will also have a little need help brochure. So I know that may not feel like a lot, but that's not really the goal of the morning, to connect people to services. The need help brochure shares resources that are available to people. But for veterans, people who are veterans and youth, there is a number that they can contact at that moment. So successful surveys, what do we do to maximize this? One, it's important that we just really do the best we can. And that seems sort of course, we're doing the best we can. We're all here, we all want to do this, but it's a little bit harder the morning of the count when you feel a little bit more nervous and you're not really sure, but we really want to strive to have the best count we can. And the reason is that's a better representation of homelessness in our community. And the goal really is to have the best representation. It may not be perfect, but the best representation we can about what homelessness looks like in our community. So as Corey mentioned earlier, approach the person if you're uncertain about whether or not they have slept outside the night before. Introduce yourself, explain what you're doing. Keeping in mind that we're just talking to people. It's there's nothing particularly unique or extra special about the people who we're interviewing. They're just people. Some people will feel interested in answering questions, others won't. Just like if you were to ask people questions in any other location. follow the survey script. That's important in that we're thinking about the questions, we're moving through those questions, not necessarily going off onto tangents or sharing information back and forth between the interviewer sharing with the person they're interviewing and vice versa. It's really your goal to ask questions, collect that information, and then move on to another person, of course, respectfully. Ensure that only interviewers are completing surveys. This applies probably less now than it did with paper surveys, but we wouldn't want anybody to hand their phone to somebody and say, here, you just fill it out. The intent is that the interviewers are asking the questions and asking them the way that they're written, and people are answering. Honor requests not to participate or to skip questions. If somebody says they do not want to participate, you don't need to convince them or persuade or beg them or anything like that. We're not doing telemarketing. We're just asking people if they're willing to participate. Thank people for their time. As you'll see, or as you already know, the interview is asks a lot of personal questions. So keeping in mind, when we share personal information with people, especially strangers, it can leave us feeling vulnerable or a little insecure at the end of the interview or throughout. And so be sincere and thank people for their time. It really helps our community. Those who are willing to share really help our community, help with the funding that our community receives, but it's a heavy lift on people who are answering personal questions. And share gift cards. So make sure that the people who you are interviewing receive a gift card. And sometimes, as we've talked about the need for runners, sometimes you may not have a gift card and you need to work with your team to get some. So if the person seems particularly interested in it, make sure that you're staying with that person until you get them a gift card. If you don't have any, we want to make sure that people understand that it is our goal to get them a gift card. We didn't set them up for an interview and then we don't have one. So keeping aware of your surroundings. So, we're out, we're in the dark, we're of course in pairs, but it's just important to sort of be aware of the people and pets who are around you. Thinking about your body positioning, in that if somebody's sitting down on the ground, you don't want to come towering over them, talking loudly, hey, do you want to fill out a survey? You want to just keep that communication and your body language very respectful. So if you see the person who's in the slide, that is respectful body language, getting down at the same level as people if they're sitting down. And if people are standing up, kind of having a shoulder to shoulder. And now we're, of course, striving to maintain a little bit more distance than we have in the past. But with paper surveys, we never wanted people to feel like we were writing down secret information about them on our clipboard. And it'll be the same thing with the phones, that you're not putting your phone in someone's face or being that close to somebody, but you don't want it to seem like what you're putting in your phone is some secret information about them, that you are indeed just checking on or typing in the answers that the people are providing. Maintaining appropriate distance. And this was important before COVID. We don't want to crowd people, be too close. There's no space invaders going on here. We want to make sure that we're at a distance that makes most people feel comfortable. And again, the distance that feels comfortable sometimes isn't too far because you are asking really personal questions. So you want people, sometimes you may need to say, like, can we walk over here a little bit? Or if they're in a group of people, if you want to help people maintain their privacy. And also protecting people's privacy. So keeping in mind that they may be with a group of people and not want to share all of their personal information with the group of people who they're with, or the group of people who you're with, or the other person who you're with. So just try to have a sense of whether or not people are feeling comfortable. And if it looks like people feel uncomfortable, like they might be kind of looking at other people or lowering their voice, then try to make some adjustments, minor adjustments to protect the privacy of people. And remain calm and de-escalate any tense situations. So some of the people who are experiencing homelessness or sleeping outside may be experiencing some mental health problems that make these questions, we know that the questions can be stressful for everyone, but what an individual may be experiencing may make it more stressful than it is for others. So the questions may get people worked up, or another situation may get a person worked up. And just remain calm and work to de-escalate tense situations. So for example, if a person seems like they're getting increasingly more agitated with the questions, feel free to ask them and say, like, you know, or assure them it's okay to stop the interview if this feels stressful to you, or I don't need to ask any more questions if this is putting stress on you, or if this feels stressful. And also questions that are, you know, people who feel a little bit more paranoid about sharing their personal information, and they're sharing personal information. If they feel that they need to skip some of those, make them feel very comfortable in doing so. And of course, if things if you are in an unsafe situation or something escalates and you are unable to de-escalate it, remove yourself, and please, if you are in danger or someone in your group is in danger, please call 911. We will be happy to hear about that everywhere afterwards, but nobody at headquarters can save you. So please make sure to call 911 if you're feeling if you're feeling threatened. And I will turn it over to Corey to talk about body language.
So I'm just going to kind of pick up kind of where Claudia didn't leave off, but where she kind of recovers some of what she covered, but with some images here. So, you know, Claudia talked about not crowding anyone and giving lots of space. And, you know, this is for everyone's safety, but also for just people's kind of general personal sense of space and comfort. And to aim for a 95 or 45-degree angle. So like Claudia said, shoulder to shoulder rather than face to face, kind of coming at it from this angle feels a lot more comfortable for people and is a lot more inviting and welcoming. Here's another example of good body language. It's important for the interviewer to be level with the person that they're interviewing. You don't want to, as in this example, be standing over someone who's sitting down. You would want to crouch down and be at their level, and vice versa. If someone's standing up and you've been sitting down, you know, you'll need to come up and be to their level, or invite them to sit with you if another chair is available. And you can see here in this picture as well that this interviewer is kind of at a 45-degree angle and hopefully giving some like purview of what you're doing on your phone. Though I know that that can be challenging with phones, the screen not always being so visible, but it is kind of good to, you know, just as you would hold a paper survey, kind of have your phone not closed to yourself and doing this, but kind of open like this and reading the question and then going back and showing that you're responding in the way that that person is telling you to respond. We want people to feel that their answers are being recorded in the way that they're sharing them. So as Claudia mentioned, we need to be cautious when out in the field and working with others and talking with others. So here's some tips kind of for being cautious when out doing these surveys. As Claudia mentioned earlier, it's really important that you do not survey outside your area, right? Each team is assigned a specific sector, and you may be literally at the edge of a street that ends your sector, and you can see over across into the street into a park, and you can see a ton of people kind of hanging out in the park, and you're like, those people are experiencing homelessness. those people are in someone else's sector. If there's if it's a dividing line, and they've likely already been surveyed by the folks that are in that sector, or are about to be surveyed. So it's important that you stay within your sector to reduce duplication. We don't want to survey multiple people or survey the same person multiple times. If you're really concerned about missing someone, you can always call or talk to your team lead and have them call headquarters, and have headquarters say, let them know, like, hey, we're this isn't in our sector, but we can see a large encampment over in this area. And then we'll call that team lead and let them know, hey, there's a big encampment that was just reported, or a group of people just reported in your sector. And that's the better way about going about things. So that kind of talks about duplicating surveys. We really want to be cautious of duplicating surveys, and there'll be questions in the survey that also help to protect us from interviewing someone more than once. As Claudia mentioned, it's really important not to deviate from the survey, to read all the questions as they're written. If someone needs a question to be explained differently, that's fine, but you want to make sure that we give everyone the opportunity to answer each question exactly as it's written first, before deciding that person needs to understand this question differently. They'll ask questions of you when they need to, and then you can respond accordingly. Like Claudia mentioned, it's also important to allow people to respond to the survey themselves, but not allow them to fill the survey out. That is the interviewer's job, is to fill the survey out, to ensure that all surveys are being conducted the same across the board. We need to keep all the information that we learn when surveying people to ourselves. It's not your job to report emergencies that person's experiencing, or get that person help, or share information that just seems interesting with your peers. When you're done, you're collecting really personal information about people, and it's your job to just kind of keep that between you and the person that you're surveying. We're going to keep all information that we collect confidential. It's also really important that you be mindful of how you're responding to people when they're sharing this personal information. The best response is really no response. And I know that can sound kind of harsh, but we don't necessarily know how people feel about their experience. What to some of us might seem like a very sad experience might not feel the same to someone else. So it's important not to be judgmental while asking these questions and hearing someone's story, to just let them share with you what they'd like, and then document that and move through the survey, and then tell them thank you for sharing. And that's about the best response that you can give, that they share. It's not your job to provide sympathy in these situations, or have a really shocked reaction, just to kind of move through the survey. It's also really can be challenging, but it's really important that you not offer or promise any services to anyone, though this information will get reported back to the county and will be used to help organize services. We can't make specific promises to people because we can't always ensure that those services will be delivered to them. Generally, this information is used to help promote and create better services for people experiencing homelessness. But so please don't promise any housing services. Please don't promise any other services will come out to that person in their area. Don't offer anyone rides, and please don't give anyone money. The only incentive that we should be offering is the gift cards. So safety is really important. I've actually received a number of emails from volunteers already this year asking about the safety of participating in the street count. And I can say generally that it is a very safe endeavor. We've had over the years very few issues, and I can't really even remember a specifically traumatic issue of any kind. I think most of the issues that we have are more issues of ensuring that we have enough surveys and that we have enough gift cards to give to people. And that's really kind of the worst issues that we have. I think sometimes there's people who really don't want to be surveyed. And sometimes they react negatively to being asked to being surveyed, but that's pretty rare. Most people will just say no if they don't want to be surveyed, and we should be moving on at that point and not pressing the issue. But these are some steps you can take to remain safe, even though this is a pretty safe endeavor. So it's important to stay with your team. Your team will be of various size. Some teams will be very large and some will be small. And when I say small, I mean it could be a team of 3. So if you're in a team of 3, you're going to be in a buddy system of 3. If you're in a team of 4, then you can pair off and be in teams of 2 there. And if you're in a larger group, then you can kind of organize that buddy system in the best way that feels right for your team and for your sector. But you never want to be alone. And as Claudia mentioned, you might want to provide some privacy while completing a survey, but you should be within eyesight of your team member. They should be able, if you were to call out for support, your team member should be within that call out range. But you don't need to be, hand in hand the entire time either. Just want to be kind of within sight of each other to help each other out. Claudia kind of already talked about clothes and possessions. Best to kind of leave those back and come prepared with clothing that will keep you warm and comfortable throughout the day. And listen to yourself. If something feels weird or wrong, or you feel like you're walking to a situation that you shouldn't be walking into, don't walk into it. Trust yourself, and you can also call out if you feel like you're walking up on an area where you can see a number of people, but you don't feel safe walking into that area, maybe because of an animal, or it just feels like someone's home that you're walking into, or a camp that you're walking into. It doesn't feel safe just to walk in. Feel free to call out and say, hi, is anyone available to talk to me, from a respectful distance. And if people don't respond, check in with your team lead and see if there's a better way to approach things together. But always, leave the situation if it feels like a bad situation. We've talked a lot about safe and respectful distance. People will be sleeping in different types of situations. You're going to stumble upon tents and encampments. You'll find people kind of curled up in blankets, sleeping bags, and sometimes boxes. It's not our job to enter in. Those are people's homes that they've created for themselves. We shouldn't be encroaching onto those things, but again, calling out towards there and letting people know we're there. If they wake up and come and meet with you, great. If not, we'll talk about how to count those people without stepping into their home or waking them up. There will be dogs. There'll be a lot of dogs. People have dogs that, especially that are living in encampments and are walking around by themselves. A lot of times we'll have dogs. It's once you've gotten permission to pet a dog, that's fine. But I would not stick my hand out to pet anyone's dog without their permission. And I would be very cautious about approaching people with dogs. Make sure you talk to them from a distance, because sometimes dogs are very protective and we don't want anyone to get into a bad situation there. And like Claudia mentioned, if a situation warrants a call to 911, please call 911. If you feel like it's an emergency where you need help in that moment, call 911. Always better to make that emergency call and have the police leave without incident rather than trying to wait to contact your team lead if it's a real emergency. Okay, so we're going to jump into completing that app and survey, but before we do it seems that we have a question in the chat. Margaret asked, if there's a group sleeping first thing in the morning who can't be interviewed, should we return to that area later in the day? That's a great question. And I think that yes, if it's in your sector and there's a group that's asleep, or a person that's asleep, good to make note of that and come back and as the sun comes up higher. I think that's a great idea. We'll also talk about if you're not able to interview someone that's asleep and remains asleep throughout the time that you're out there. There could be another option, but I think that that's a great idea. So I'm going to change our view here and take us to this TPCH point in time count screen. Is that the screen everyone can see? Feeling a little confused.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. So I know all of you received an email from Everyone Counts because you got registered for this training. So I know you received an email that had a lot of information about next steps to take. And one of those next steps was to come to this webpage and download the survey application onto your smart device or phone, and download the survey form, sign into the survey application, and fill out the survey. So if you haven't done that already or are having questions about how to do that, this is the page that you want to skim through and collect that information. It gives you step-by-step instructions of how to download the survey application onto either your Android phone, your Apple phone, or if you're using a different type of device, you can also do it from the Microsoft Store, which I did today for my desktop computer. So it's possible to put it onto really any device. Once you have the form, once you have the app on your phone or smart device, you then want to download the point in time count survey form, which you do here from this page by clicking this button. Once you have the survey application downloaded, it'll look like this, ArcGIS Survey 123. And then you'll be able to log in using a user login and password, and you'll begin able to filling out surveys, which we're going to ask you to do prior to the count so you can begin practicing using the survey. There is another step. If you were someone who did this training last year and downloaded this app onto your phone and also downloaded the 2022 pit count survey form, you'll need to go through an extra step, which if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this page, there's a step here that says deleting the 2022 pit count survey form from your phone. So you can see on this screen here that this is a person who has two different forms. They have the new 2023 pit count survey form and the 2022. You'll want to delete that 2022 so it accidentally doesn't get utilized on the morning of the count. And this is no longer in use, so we won't be able to extrapolate any data from this form. But this step shows you how to delete that survey. So feel free to go to this page, navigate to this page to learn how to do that if you have questions there. But we're going to go ahead and go to the app and log in and go through and practice the survey right now. So when you pull up the app on your phone, it should look like this. And you'll want to click sign in with ArcGIS Online. I'm sharing this user login, and you can feel free to use it. It's pit user COT, C-O-T, 1. And the password is pit count 1. Then you choose sign in, and it'll take you to the different survey forms that you have downloaded, which if you've deleted the old one, it should just be the one. You'll select this. And this is the main screen. And then you can begin collecting a survey here. You choose collect, and it takes you to your first survey form. So everyone's page would look like this. Every time you pull up a survey to complete with each person that you want to survey, it'll show you your exact location, which is really important for us on our end. It will help with duplication of surveys. Will also help to give us a really great sense of where people are sheltering and experiencing homelessness. So it'll be really valuable information for us to have that we weren't collecting when using the paper form. The app is also going to allow us to use data in a number of ways that we weren't able to in the past. It'll not only save us a lot of time and energy and errors from doing manual data entry, it'll also allow us to have a number of other pieces of data that are going to be automatically collected by the survey tool without any effort. So we're really excited to use this app We know, and I'll put it out there, that it's going to be a bumpy start, that not everyone's used to collecting information this way. A lot of us aren't even used to using applications on our phone in this way. And we know from experiences of other counties and communities that have been using these apps for a number of years that the first year is really challenging. So we're just going to put that out there and say that, be transparent. We know that this is going to be a hard first year using this app, but the years to come will be so much easier, so much more streamlined, and will give us much cleaner, better data. And we're really excited to use it. And to be honest, Pima County is quite behind. Most counties have been using this type of technology for a number of years. Maricopa, I believe, is in there. Claudia, do you know what year they're in? Is it the 4th or 5th year?
I'm not sure, but yeah, COVID years make it hard to count, but yeah, they've been doing it for a few years.
So, and we've had some lessons learned from them. So we're hopefully not going to experience all the challenges that they did, but we really appreciate everyone taking the time to try this new technology and give it a chance, and kind of move clunkily through it with us. We know it won't be perfect this year, but we really appreciate you trying. So we're going to do our best to train you to use it well. So Claudia and I are going to kind of go through a practice survey here. So this is what it'll look like when you start. I will show you just initially before I begin interviewing Claudia.
Right. Can you pause for just a second? Because there's a couple of requests. One for sign-in details. Can you share that with
I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, and then also going back to the step after the app is downloaded.
So then you need to download the form, and they will, let me put that web page in the chat. So if you navigate to this page here that's in the chat, which is the TPCH Point in Time Count Hub Survey Training page, that will give you details on how to, once you have the app downloaded, the next steps you need to take, which is going to be to download that survey onto the app. Once you download that survey, then you can log in using this information. And all of this information is delineated in the email that you use to register for this training, including this username and this password. So if you refer back to that email that you received, they should have received one today. I sent it out again right before the training. You should be able to find all of this information there as well if you need to reference it again later.
And so don't be too worried about it if you can't do it right this second, because you'll have the opportunity to do that after the training, and then there will be an opportunity for office hours after you have an opportunity to practice the survey, to go through the steps, practice the survey, then there's an opportunity to ask more questions.
And in fact, I would recommend maybe not even bother with trying to get all of this started on your phone in this moment. I would recommend doing that after the training, just so that you can focus now on kind of how to use the app. I'd much prefer for you to kind of watch and observe us do this now, and try and do it on your own after. And like Claudia said, if you encounter any problems, there's going to be a number of training and office hours where you can meet with me individually. It'll be much smaller groups. It won't be a webinar style. It'll be a format where we can all see each other and ask questions and practice using the app together, or talk about other problems or challenges that you're concerned about when in regards to the count. So don't feel like this is your only window of time. Please allow yourself the time to kind of learn how to use it today and practice at another time. So hopefully everyone can see the screen well. This is what the survey form looks like. Like I said, it'll show your exact location. You'll start by entering your name. So I'll put my name here, and it's going to show the time that the survey is being completed. And it'll initially start by asking you, are you able to survey this person? And when it says, are you able to survey this person? This is like, can you go up to this person and talk to them is what it's asking. Because if the person's asleep on the ground and you don't think you're going to be able to come back to them again, like someone asked earlier, then the answer is no. You can't survey that person. Or perhaps you went up to them and tried to talk to them and they immediately said like, no, I don't want to talk to you. Like, just like didn't even want to give you the time of day. And you were kind of thinking this person was experiencing homelessness. You can say, are you able to survey this person? No. And then it will ask you a few follow-up questions. It'll say, because this person is unable or unwilling to be interviewed, complete the following questions to the best of your ability based on what you can observe. So let's say you see a person that's asleep at a bus stop. It looks to you as if they're experiencing homelessness. They have, a blanket that they've secured from like gospel rescue mission. You can tell that the person looks like they're in some tattered clothes, and you're pretty sure they're experiencing homelessness and they're by themselves. You would choose one person here, so including yourself, so including that person you see, person one, how many adults in their household who are sleeping in the same location last night. So this is like you observing someone who would have answered this question. And then if there's any children that are present there, you would put the number of that. If there's 2 people sleeping on the bench, you would put 2 here. But you only see one person. You say, no, you're not able to survey this person. And then there's a few follow-up questions that you'll need to answer for each person here. So if you put 2 people here, you'll have to answer these questions twice. So we'll put 2. Let's say you see 2 people asleep at the bus stop. First, you'll say completed about the first person. Is this person homeless? And then this question underneath is giving you more details about what that means. How certain are you that that person meets HUD's criteria of staying in a place not meant for human habitation, like a tent, vehicle, park bench, etc.? Well, you see this person completely asleep on the bench. Looks like they've been sleeping there all night. You're definitely certain that this person is experiencing homelessness, but maybe not. Maybe you have different feelings about it, and you can choose those different options here.
And just to interject really quickly, keeping in mind that the word homeless is used a little bit loosely, in that we're really talking specifically about that night. So was that person sleeping in the place not meant for human habitation that night?
Thank you. We'll also ask you to share some other identifying characteristics if the person has any, and if there's anything that you can see. So if this person on the bench is asleep and they have, let's say, a black beanie on, you would type black beanie, and maybe there's a large group of plastic bags underneath the bench with a large number of plastic bags. And this is, again, for deduplication, so that if this person were to wake up and be surveyed again later, it might be help with that, or if someone else sees them and completes the same observation form, that would help us to deduplicate. Then I hit next down there. You saw that there's a little arrow. I can go back if I want to change my answer, although now it's telling me I need to fill this out first. But this is for the second person. I said there was 2 people there. I'm definitely sure that this person was homeless. Well, they have on a red scarf. And if I want to go back and change something to the first one, I can. But I'm going to navigate through here. And then you notice there's not another arrow. I can go back and forth, but then the arrow kind of goes away. And that's because there's no more questions. So if you look at the very bottom of the page here, there's a little check mark down here. And that's how we'll submit the form. So I've completed it as thoroughly as I can for this observation. I hit check, and now it's going to give me these options. It'll say save and outbox. Maybe there was something that you weren't sure about, or a question you weren't able to respond to, and you want to save this to come back to later. That's an option. You can continue to do the survey. So like maybe you realize, oh, quickly after you click the check that there's something you want to go back and change, you can by continuing the survey. Or you can
scroll up just a little bit. We can't see the checkbox.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Let me, maybe if I Can you see it now?
No.
That's full screen. Can you see the checkbox now?
No, I think we might just have to, okay. Oh, maybe I just can't see it.
It's like a little check mark.
You know, I may not be able to see it because of the toolbar at the bottom of the.
A bunch of people are saying they see
Yep,
it.
I know. Yeah. Okay. So perfect. It's probably just me with
Okay.
the webinar part down there.
Okay, great. I'm glad others can see it. So again, so you can always go back. You can save this to your outbox, and we'll go to the outbox later and see what that looks like. But you can also, if you're sure that the survey's done and is good to go, you click send now. And then it's sending that to our database. And now that's done. And now you can collect another survey. And just so you can see, if I had been able to survey this person, then a new thing pops up, right? Instead of doing an observation tool, it's now going to pop the script that you need to begin surveying that person or inviting them to complete a survey. So Claudia is going to pretend to be the person that I'm surveying. So I would have already kind of approached Claudia and kind of given my initial spiel of like, do you know where I can find folks who slept outside last night in this area? And she can say, you know, I'm interested in talking with you about that. And so then I would go into this little spiel here and I would say, well, hi, thanks for being willing to talk to me. My name's Corey, and I'm a volunteer for the Tucson Pima collaboration to end homelessness. And we're conducting a survey to count people who are experiencing homelessness to provide better programs and services to them. Your participation is voluntary, and your responses to questions will be entered into the Homeless Management Information System, better known as HMIS, which is shared by homeless service providers. I need to read each question all the way through. Are you willing to share about 10 minutes of your time to answer these questions?
Yes.
Okay. So then Claudia says yes, and then the survey is going to kind of begin. If Claudia had said no, it's going to take you through the exact same process that we just went through. That person said no, they don't want to complete the survey. That's 100% fine. You're going to say there's one person there. You're going to do the exact same thing. You're pretty sure that person experienced homelessness, or possibly sure, or you're definitely sure. And you're going to say, you know, woman with braids, because Claudia's got some pretty braids right now. And then again, you'll click the checkbox. That's all. There's no more buttons to go next. That's all the questions we have. You click check. You could click send now. You could go back to the survey if you meant to do something else. If you go to save to outbox, you'll see that now when we go to collect the next survey, there's an outbox, and the outbox will keep the different surveys lined up in here for you to go back to and reference. That way, if you have a question that you need to ask of your team lead, if a survey gets interrupted and you have to pause it, you can just click send and go to the outbox. It'll take it to the outbox, choose that option. And then there's some other options here about deleting them, but we'll go back to that later. Then you just click up here in this corner. Wait, go back to list. Oh no, it's the green arrow. I'm sorry. I'm still learning all of this too. So this green arrow up at the top will take you back. So we're going to try Claudia again, but this time I'll actually listen to her yes. I put my name. Yes, I'm able to survey. I already read this to Claudia. She said yes, that she was willing. So can I have 5 minutes of your time? She had said yes. So Claudia, did another volunteer or survey worker already ask you these same locations about where you slept last night?
No, I don't think so. I haven't talked to anybody today.
So where did you sleep last night?
I slept right here under this stairwell.
Okay. So let's see, under the stairwell. Would you say that that's street or sidewalk, or is
Well,
that
it's basically the street, because
Okay.
the building's not abandoned, it's just on the side of a building.
Okay.
On the street.
I'll choose that option then. And you can see here that there's a number of options that are in blue. Those are all options that are going to qualify someone to continue with the survey. If folks have stayed any of these options that are here in this maroon color, that won't be considered sleeping outside, and that will end the survey.
And people should also understand that if a person has slept in an emergency shelter or safe haven, some other places, we understand that those people may still be experiencing homelessness, and that information is collected in a different way.
Yeah, there'll be a same type of count the night before. And so these are people that have probably moved out onto the street. So then they would be counted twice. Okay, Claudia, so I'm going to start to collect some information about you. Are you willing to share your first name?
Sure, it's Claudia.
Okay. And your last name?
Powell.
Any aliases?
No.
And your date of birth?
Do I have to share my date of birth?
You don't have to if you don't want to.
Okay, well, I'll share it.
Okay. What is it?
It's January 1st, 1985.
Okay. And what are the last 4 digits of your social security number?
Why do you want my social security number?
We use it for kind of deduplicating. So if we have folks that are completing surveys in the same area at the same time, we can use this information to kind of help distinguish those surveys from each other, but it's not necessary for you to share it if you're not comfortable. It's not an issue at all.
Okay, I'll share it.
Okay.
It's 1, 2, 3, 4.
And there's going to be some information that's really sensitive that people may or may not want to share. It's important to be very casual about it and not pressure them at all. Let them know it's up to them to share and that they can skip that if they'd like. You'll find that if you come at it from that approach, people are more willing to share than if you try to pressure someone to share. Okay, so Claudia, including yourself, how many adults are there in your household who were sleeping in the same location with you last night?
There was just 2 of us. It was just me and my brother.
Okay. And so this isn't written out here, but this is kind of an important part to understand because this is a really tricky little bit of a spot in the survey. We're really only trying to collect information about the person we're surveying, but we're also going to attempt to collect information about people who might not get surveyed. But we want to be really sure that those people aren't going to be there getting surveyed. So typically you're really just going to put a 1 here for the person you're interviewing and move on. Unless that person tells you that there's someone that slept in the same location with them last night that isn't going to come out. So you said your brother stayed with you?
Yes.
Okay. And is your brother here with you now or is he around?
No, he went to the store.
Okay. So he's out and about.
Yeah, he's out. He's going to be back in a little bit, but he's not going to want to talk to you.
He's not going to want to talk to me.
No.
Okay. You don't think he'll be willing to take a survey?
No.
Okay. Would you like to complete a survey on his behalf?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay. And I can give you an extra gift card to give to him so you can both eat some breakfast together, okay?
That sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So now I'm going to put 2 here. The same would be true if the person mentioned, is your brother over 18?
No, my brother's 12.
Oh, okay. So let me change that. I made an assumption that he was a little older. My bad. So I'm going to change this to 1 person for yourself and 1 for your brother here. And we're going to go through questions for both of you. Okay. But first we'll go through a series of questions for you. And then when we're done, we'll go through the same series of questions for your brother. Is that okay?
Sure.
So this can be a really confusing space. I think it's the trickiest space on the whole survey for everyone to know. But just be aware that if you put more than 1 person in this area, you're going to have to complete the survey. It's going to prompt you to complete the survey as many times as you've reported here. So if you put 6 people down here, the survey is going to keep coming up over and over those 6 times until you've completed it for those 6 people. So be cautious here. All right. So Claudia, the first set of questions is about you, like I said. And you'll notice in the blue, it's giving directions to you as the surveyor, not to be read to the person. So this tells you as a surveyor to ask the following questions to the original respondent and then repeat for the other household members in the order of oldest to youngest if other household members are not present. So that was giving directions for how to use this piece here. So because there's multiple people, Claudia, I'm going to use your initials to help keep track of your questions. So you're CP, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to skip this question to here because this is how are you related to person one, but Claudia is person one. So I skip for person one, which doesn't really make sense, but that is how the app is set up. And I'm so sorry. It's a little tricky. So Claudia, earlier you told me your date of birth and the app told me that you were 38. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You could just ask that again too there. How old are you? If someone didn't want to give their date of birth, didn't want to tell you how old they are, that's fine. We don't need to pressure them, but we do have to make an estimate of the person's age. It's really important data that HUD requires of us. So if a person has declined their date of birth and declined to share their age, then you'll ask, okay, are you, and then offer these suggestions to see if they're willing to tell you an age category. So you can ask them if they're under age 18, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, 35, and so on. And then if they aren't willing to tell you that, then you're going to go ahead and just make a guess there and put what your best guess of what you think. You don't feel comfortable doing that, or you really can't figure it out, you can choose don't know or say that that person refused to share that information. Claudia, are you Hispanic or Latino?
No.
Okay, so I'll choose non-Hispanic. What is your race? You can say yes to more than one race.
I'm Black.
Okay. And what is your gender?
What do you mean by that?
Do you consider yourself to be male, female, a gender other than singularly male or female, like non-binary, gender fluid?
Oh, I get it. I'm female.
Agender, transgender, questioning. You said what?
I said I get it now. I'm female.
Okay, gotcha. What best describes your sexual orientation? So like heterosexual or straight, gay,
Right, I'm
lesbian,
straight.
queer. Okay. Have you served active duty in the United States Armed Forces, like the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, or Coastal Guard?
No, I haven't.
I just saw an error. And were you ever called into active duty as a member of the National Guard or reservist?
No.
Is this the first time you have experienced homelessness?
No.
About when did you become homeless? And I'm asking for the date, but just make your best estimate.
About 6 months ago.
Okay, so we're today is January 10th. So about 6 months ago would have been what, around July 10th, is that right?
Yeah, that's about right. It was after 4th of July.
After 4th of July. So should I put July 10th or July 5th, or when would you like me to put?
July 10th.
July 10th, okay. And that's 2022.
Right.
So including this time that you've experienced homelessness, how many times have you experienced homelessness in the past 3 years?
2 times. This time and one other time.
Okay. So I'm going to choose less than 4 times. And where did you last have a permanent residence? So the
I
last
lived at an apartment.
Okay. I'm just realizing these questions are here.
My apartment was at Grant and Craycroft.
All right, so the next questions we're only going to ask of people 18 years of age and older, which Claudia is, so we can proceed. If Claudia was under 18, these questions wouldn't populate, so you wouldn't see them. If there was some kind of error, you'd want to make sure that you still didn't ask these questions of anyone who's under 18. So the next set of questions is about sensitive topics, and you don't have to answer any question that you don't want to. However, your answers will be combined with the answers of other people who take the survey and use to help to provide better programs and services to homeless people. So can you tell me, Claudia, do you drink alcoholic beverages or use drugs? These could be illegal or prescription drugs for non-medical reasons.
Yes.
Okay. And do you have a mental health issue such as post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, chronic depression,
No.
chronic anxiety? Do you have a physical disability or have you had a traumatic brain injury? This could be something that substantially limits one or more of your basic physical activities, such as walking, climbing stairs,
No, I
reaching,
don't.
moving, carrying. Okay. Do any of the situations we just discussed keep you from holding a job or living in stable housing?
No.
So you mentioned that you drink alcoholic beverages and use drugs. That doesn't inhibit you.
No.
Okay. Have you ever received special education services for an extended period of time?
No.
Do you have AIDS or an HIV related illness?
I don't want to talk about that.
Okay. So when someone says something like that, you just go to refuse. There's no reason to pressure them. Do you receive any disability benefits such as Social Security income, Social Security disability income, or veterans disability benefits?
No, I don't receive any of those.
Are you experiencing homelessness because you are currently fleeing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking?
Yes, I was leaving a partner who was abusive.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Are you a domestic violence victim or survivor?
Yes.
And a few more questions about that. When did your last experience of domestic violence occur? Would you say within the past 3 months, 3 to 6 months ago, 6 to 12 months ago, more than a year ago?
6 to 12 months ago.
Okay. And are you currently fleeing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking?
Yes, that's why I left.
Yes, I understand that. I was reading all the questions as they're written just to ensure that we capture everything that we need to, but I hear you and I'm just going to continue reading the questions as they're written, okay? Do you regularly use services in the community aimed at supporting people experiencing homelessness? So do you regularly use services like shelters, case management, transitional housing, or other kinds of housing?
No, I don't use any services.
Okay. So a few questions about why you might not use services. What keeps you from using services for people experiencing homelessness? Would you say alcohol use problems is a reason?
No, I don't use them because I don't like them.
You don't like them.
I don't think they're safe.
They don't feel safe. Okay, let me see if I can find that here in this list. Let's see. Unsafe conditions such as theft, violence, or abuse. Does that feel
Yes.
like the reason?
Yeah, that's why. And also because I don't have an ID, and you have to have an ID usually to get the services.
Okay, so here's a lack of appropriate identification or documentation.
Yeah.
Okay, any other reasons that you aren't accessing services?
Also because I have my brother with me, and so I can't always go to a place with him.
Okay, so I think family status would be that.
Yeah.
You have children with you. Okay.
And that's all.
Okay, thank you for sharing all of that. That's really helpful information to have. Okay, so you notice it kind of like started at the bottom. I had to scroll up, which isn't the best. But it takes you back up to the initials question when you scroll back up. And this is where I would ask for the initials of her brother. So Claudia, can you tell me the initials of your brother?
DP.
And how are you related to DP?
He's my brother.
Yes. So I would choose, let's see, other family. And then this part's tricky. We're not going to go through this whole section for DP, but the questions remain in the exact same format as they did for when we were interviewing Claudia. So it's first person and our third person. And it's hard because, right, you're not talking about the person you're interviewing anymore. You're talking about someone who's not there. So you kind of have to think about that while you're asking this. So rather than how old are you, you can use those initials that you just collected. So how old is DP? And you said DP was 11?
12.
12. And then again, you would go through the exact same thing. If they hesitated about telling you that person's age, you could ask for the age categories. If it was a child, you would know that it was that person was under the age of 18. And then you'll go through and ask the same questions. Is DP Hispanic or Latino? What is DP's race? What is their gender? And a lot of this might be don't knows when they're responding on behalf of someone else, and that's perfectly fine. We're just trying to collect as much information as we can about the people experiencing homelessness that aren't going to be surveyed that day. So you would go through all of those questions, and then again, click the check mark at the end. You'll see that if a question's required and you go to click the check mark, it'll kind of bounce you back and highlight that question. So are you Hispanic or Latino was a required question. Let's say I wasn't able to continue, the person didn't want to continue the survey. I'll put refused, and then I'll be able to move on. And I'll be able to click this check box. It'll take me to the next one that I didn't do, right? And it'll kind of go on like that.
And just a couple of things to add here about this part that may have now all of a sudden seemed confusing, how it bounces you back to the top to complete the questions for someone else. And I know we're over time, so we'll try to keep this short, but it's very rare that you will be, that one person will answer questions for multiple people. That doesn't happen very often. Once in a while it will, but most of the time people answer for themselves or they don't answer at all for other people. So this occurrence when you have to then ask somebody about someone else, it will be very rare. And keeping in mind, we know it's clunky that it doesn't say, it used to be that we had a separate tool that you would pull out and then the pronouns were appropriate instead of saying, do you this or that. It's asking, does the person or does he or she do this or that? So so we understand that that is challenging. Please know that that is not going to be, it'll be very rare that happens for anyone. Most people will not encounter that at all. And the other part of that is the phrasing refused is something we use all the time in data collection, and understand that the word refused doesn't have to be I won't answer that, or the word refuse seems a little bit more aggressive than it actually is. It just means somebody is deciding not to answer that question.
So thank you so much for taking the time, and I know we are over, to go through that just really quickly. We encourage you to practice. The survey is, tricky to use. It's a new form, so we want people to be comfortable. So please take some time to practice with a friend, a family member, a coworker, someone that you feel comfortable with. Maybe someone you don't feel comfortable with to really get a really good practice experience. And then be sure to clarify questions that you have. People are asking if there's a later date where we'll be able to meet up. And yes, we are going to hold office hours, which you can see the dates and times here. There's information in that same email that you use to register for this training. There's 4 different registration links in that email, and you can register for one or all of these times if you'd like. And it'll just be an open forum with myself and other folks with questions. And so there'll be a great time to ask your questions, practice with others, We can even do breakout sessions in there. If you want to go and practice surveys together, you can do that. We can use that time however meets everyone's needs.
And Corey, I think the question is also about when will they be told to meet up? That will happen over email. That will come from your team lead or your team administrative assistant. So someone will contact you by email to share where your meetup will be. And then the other question in the Q&A is the survey available in Spanish? And no, it's not. If you are a person who is fluent in Spanish and can ask, can translate with the person who you're speaking to, we are very happy for people to do that who are able to. There's a lot of complications about it being in another language in that so many people don't speak Spanish. It's different now that we have the app. So we might in future years be able to have it in Spanish where someone who could administer it competently in Spanish could click on that and do so. So we would love to get there. We feel like it's really, really important and we are just not there yet.
So if folks have other questions, right now is a great time to share them in the question box. I know we're over time, but please do utilize the office hours. There's another training that'll be happening on the 18th. It'll be in the morning time. If that's a convenient time for you, you're welcome to attend the second training. This training will also be made available on demand, and you'll receive information about how to register for the on-demand training. So feel free to utilize the training as much as you need and to use the office hours to ask additional questions that you might have.
And one more question about what happens if a person speaks only Spanish and you don't. That is a great thing to identify among your team when you meet up with your team, and we will ask team leads to identify if there are people on your team who speak Spanish. And so that would be a really good time to call your team lead and say there's a person who speaks only Spanish. Is there someone who can come and complete this interview?
There were a few other questions in the chat that I don't think we responded to earlier. Someone asked, are people actually willing to give up their name, info, etc.? Some folks are, some folks aren't. A lot of the folks experiencing homelessness are already in the HMIS system. That's the system in which this information is getting entered. They've already been working with folks in the community and are very comfortable sharing a lot of information with themselves about themselves. Others aren't, and we just take what we can get and ask all these questions as respectfully as possible. Claudia, do you have a sense of how many surveys are usually administered over the? Yeah,
we in the past several years we've collected anywhere between 300 and 600 surveys. We also have the unsheltered count that happens the night before, so all of that data is combined to take a look at the number of people, or the number of people experiencing homelessness who we're able to collect data from on that particular day. And it sometimes the numbers are confusing because there's also environmental circumstances. So if it's really cold or really warm or a huge rainstorm, it's hard to know how sometimes the outside factors will impact the numbers of surveys we're able to administer. And to tag on to Corey's answer, people are really most of the time people are willing to share more information. If you haven't done it before, sometimes that's surprising. And just to kind of wrap up on that, for people who are new and participating in the count, for a lot of people, it's really can be a very meaningful experience in that they haven't necessarily had a lot of interaction with people who are experiencing homelessness, or people who are down on their luck for whatever reason, and to just listen to people's stories and some of their experience can be very moving in realizing that people are just people, but it can also be traumatic and disheartening. So please also make sure to take care of yourself. And I appreciate wholeheartedly everyone's willingness and being willing to kind of share and contribute to their community.
So there's a few more questions. Someone asked, how soon will those in administrative assistant roles be contacted by their team lead? So unfortunately, because we're still waiting for volunteers to register, for team leads to register, that's why it takes so long for us to share information with folks about what team they're assigned, what team lead they'll be assigned. And that's because we're waiting as we're trying to collect as many volunteers as possible before assigning them to the different areas. So we'll be doing sector assignments, I think next week. And so by the end, it's really, you really find out all of this information just a few days prior to the count, which I know can feel frustrating, but really as an interviewer, your role is just to show up that morning. So learning that information the night before really isn't normally too challenging for folks. And for administrative assistants, you'll be getting information about your role in another training, and I'm going to be sending out that information later tomorrow. So you'll have more information coming your way tomorrow. There are a number of camps around. Do we want to start at one end and work through the entire camp? That's a great question. I think that you should work with your team lead. So your team lead will have maps that show areas that are important to address in that sector, and we'll have a plan about how to best survey that area. So that's a great question to ask your team lead on the morning of the count, or when you're connecting with them through email.
And also keep in mind, everyone, that that where big camps are and where a lot of people are sleeping outside, there are very, very, very experienced team leads and outreach workers who do this work every single day. So it is very unlikely that there would be an area with a big camp or multiple camps that didn't have a really experienced team lead who is probably familiar with the camp and the people who live there, and can give some good suggestions about how to proceed through that. A good number of the people leading the teams are really, really experienced and do this work every day and are great at their jobs.
Someone asked about challenges getting to meet with their group.
We maybe answer that one one-on-one.
Sure. So I will respond to that over here, but if we don't have any other questions, I think that's all the information that we have for you today, and we really appreciate everyone volunteering and taking the time out of their evening to participate in today's training. We look forward to hopefully connecting with you more during office hours and on the morning of the count. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.